Hi everyone, this is Duke, and you are watching the Office Titan shows. Today I have my good friend Paul joining us, and Paul is a data engineer with over 6 years of experience, and he's based out of Austin, Texas. And Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, Doc. Glad to be here.
So I understand that you have a lot of experience as a data engineer, but for people who are not very technical, would you mind kind of tell a little bit about what you do?
Sure. Broadly speaking, as a data engineer, it's my job to move numbers from over here to over here, but make them more useful. uh, Obviously, that's simplifying, but 95% of what I end up doing is building, designing, and designing databases and designing the ways that those databases are going to talk to each other. So, if you have like a data stream from a product. If consumers are giving like a feedback and you want that data to be in a particular place, you're not going to be interacting with that data wrong, right?
Mhm.
You're going to want that data to come into some sort of secure, internal, ideally centralized point, at which point you can then type it out to all the teams that it's relevant to and like who can do stuff with that data, right? And my job is to build the collection pools for the data and build the pipes to make sure that the data gets to where it needs to go. Kind of goes with the old metaphor that data is the new oil, right?
Mhm. I see. So if I understand it correctly, so basically you are the person who built the kind of like a road that connect data from one place to another. Is that?
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And a lot of my work ends up also being talking to end users. So that's data scientists, data analysts, people who create like cool generative AI models, people who create like nice visualizations. My job is to enable them to allow them to do their job without making them have problems with the core data set.
Basically, you are the one that doing the groundwork so that other people can do their fancy job later.
Exactly.
Sounds great. So I know you've been working for quite a while. So do you have any memorable project that you've been part of?
I'll tell you the most memorable project I just worked on actually. Before I left Slalom, I was part of an internal hackathon. Part they're really concerned with getting into generative AI, and I worked with a bunch of coworkers in my office to basically build a data research tool, like a sales research tool that leveraged Bard and later ChatGPT to allow someone to uh, do basically get smart on an idea or a company or a concept fast. We basically took a lot of the knowledge that was in our like sales, in our sales team. Our sales team basically said, "Hey, here are the 10 things that we need to know before we go into a meeting," and we did a bunch of prompt engineering to basically allow the generative AI to bring that sort of information up much more quickly than you could through a traditional search. Uh, it also did things like ask follow-up questions, prompting you to like go down natural paths of inquiry. Um, and we ended up winning that internal hackathon. We were like the best of like 30, 40 teams. So something I'm very proud of. Uh, Another example I can give you is before my time at Slalom, they call me a data specialist for a consultant at Google. And basically, the team I was in was full of English majors, journalism types, people who didn't necessarily know how to code and didn't understand the value of data. What they were part of the trust and safety team, and their job was basically okay. There's a fire in California. There's a coup in Myanmar. There's a ad with hate speech on it. Let's collect all that information and send that information out to the appropriate Google like products or C-level executives, right?
Mhm.
Uh, But because they were all English journalism types, they didn't really have. They were basically just shoving all of this data into an Excel sheet and kind of hoping they could find it later. So what I did is I took their entire data platform, used a bunch of internal Google tools, and first of all unified the three big teams. The Europe, America, and Pacific teams were all doing slightly different things, so unified those together. Then we modified how data was ingested to take care of 80-90% of errors. Pull that data into SQL as opposed to having it be in Excel. Play around with the data, clean it, combine it, do whatever needs to be done with it in SQL. And then I created a bunch of dashboards, both in terms of employee monitoring and employee feedback, but also allowing us to create automated notifications of, hey, we just saw this alert. We need to do a follow-up on XYZ, or we need to send out an email about this, or we need to write a report about this. So that's something I'm really proud of. I built up this very nascent, basically bringing their data capabilities from an utter zero to a solid one, which I'm very proud of that. In fact, when I was hired for them, they originally thought I would only be spending about half the time working on data, and they thought I'd be a reporter doing it half the time. And then by the time I left, they ended up hiring, I believe, up to 9 people to replace me and to fill the gap that I filled. So, that's something that I really want to do. I really value professionally, is being able to show off the value of that data and getting people from that zero to that 11.
Mm-hmm. Sounds awesome. And I think for other people who have not worked with data before, I believe that the process that you help automate, it usually takes about a week until a few months possible, right?
For the process of automation.
Yeah.
So actually creating a particular pipeline to automate is not actually, it doesn't take that much time or that much effort. What takes time and the effort is building out the infrastructure around it so that it actually works, right? You spend 3 months building the infrastructure and a week building the pipeline.
So a lot of groundwork until you actually see something tangible.
Yeah, well, that's the best way to do it, right? You want to be able to deliver data that's valuable quickly, but once you've gotten buy-in, you really want to start building not just for today, but for the future. Because every organization needs data, and if you are building for today, that means that your future data needs just aren't going to get that, and you're going to have to do it all over again.
I see. Yeah, that's actually looking forward into the future is really, I guess, forward thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and then I think also funny that you mentioned that all these companies are multinational companies and they still use Excel to kind of do the bulk of their data processing.
Well, it's at Google too, right? But what you don't tend to think about when you think about Google, you think about it oh, that's a bunch of computer science tech nerds who just know everything. But the truth is that, just like any family, corporation, and country, a business is going to be made up of different people, and just because they're in Google doesn't mean that they are a technical branch of Google. That's just not how it works. It's not about the company. It's about the people that are in the particular department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that's why when you left, they hired 9 people to replace you. That is testament to your own work, how much the effort.
Well, they ended up expanding the needs of I probably did about 4 or 5 people's work, and then they expanded the needs of the department of the branch to 8 or 9 people, right?
I see. Then that means your work itself created a lot more opportunity for other people to join in.
Well, absolutely. Good work creates good work.
you deal with a lot of challenges at work. And so far, what is the toughest challenge that you have overcame?
I am very fortunate. My background is in physics, right?
Mm,
And the line that I always give people is uh, nothing that I need to do in the world of technology is going to be as hard as quantum physics. I mean, it's just not. All of these tools that are out there, they're designed to be built with, to be manipulated. They're designed to be understood, unlike quantum. Um, so the way that I tend to think about it is I tend to think of challenges are not necessarily difficult from a technological perspective. They're difficult from a people perspective.
mm,
Um, the hardest thing the best part about that Google job was I had a couple of really key advocates who were like really on board with, I was able to show them, hey, here's what I can do. And they're like, yes, absolutely, do more of that. I've been in positions where, I try to show them the value of data, say like, hey, I can save you XYZ time. And they aren't interested. And that is what is much more difficult in terms of a professional design. Like, there isn't a problem out there, I think, on a engineering level that I couldn't solve given enough time. The real difficulty is making sure that the whole organization is both bought in, willing to use the tools that I build, and willing to give me the time space I need to build.
mm.
And it goes both ways, right? Like I need to be able to listen, like being able to balance what I need to do versus what the corporation needs. That's probably the most difficult. That's probably the most difficult part of the job.
I see. Yeah, I think communication is always one of the toughest part of any job. Would you say that it's one of the most difficult hidden challenge that you have to deal with as a data engineer?
Oh, well, I think that I've been a solo contributor or excuse me, individual contributor or a like a stakeholder manager for a very long time. If you are on a data engineering team, you're not necessarily talking to all the different stakeholders. You're working with your manager. Your manager's telling you what to do. It's not really like you don't need to be able to communicate that well. You need to be able to solve the problem. But I have aspirations for leadership, and I am pretty good at talking to people. So those are two things that that's a really natural avenue for me to. That's like a challenge that I really want to tackle.
Mm. So I'm curious. I guess I don't think any kid growing up will have a dream of like I want to be a data engineer. For you, like how did that happen? What do you have a moment when you say, okay, actually that's where I want to go?
Well, I had less of a moment of I want to be a data engineer, and more of a moment of I don't want to be a graduate student anymore. I was in a graduate student lab at the University of Texas, working on my PhD. It was like towards the end of my first year, beginning of my second, somewhere around there, and I just thought, if I do this, I'm probably going to be in like a graduate student for like 7 or 8 years. Then it's going to be like 3 or 4 years of postdoc,
Mhm.
and then like maybe after I've done that, then I can start earning like 6 figures. But until then, I'm going to be earning less than minimum wage because I was working, 70, 80 hours a week in the lab, and I wasn't being paid very well for it. So it came to a point where that just stopped making sense, and I started looking into tech. Uh, in terms of data engineering specifically, it's less of something that I went out to go and do. I sort of thought that data analytics was going to be more, you know, doing statistics. I thought that sort of thing was going to be more on what I was going to do. But what ended up happening was that I ended up solving problems. I would try to step outside of my very small roles at like Whole Foods or early on in my career. I'm trying to step out of my small roles, and a lot of the problems that need to be solved were data engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept solving problems, and now I'm a data engineer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you touch on like a lot of data engineer first heard about the job through like data analytics, and
Absolutely.
then you get into it and you realize the problem is a lot bigger than that. Data analytics just like very tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. And I tend to think of it more of a pyramid. You've got your whole data organization is building up to the point where you can do great data science and great data science and data analysis and all that stuff. But it doesn't matter if you've got a nice pillar if you don't have a nice base to support it. And I just found myself being gravitating towards building that base out.
So I guess for data engineer, what kind of tools do you use, and do you have a favorite one?
So all the tools. So it sort of depends on what the problems you're trying to solve are.
Mm.
Usually, you're going to be building some sort of data warehousing system for Israel. And there are a million options for that. AWS, Azure, GCD, all of those have pretty robust data warehousing and like data infrastructure. There's also options like Snowflake for like reporting a warehouse. And then there are a million tools that you can use to interact with that data warehouse, like Airflow, AWS Glue, Lambda, to interact and like make sure that the data. Basically, you've got the core of Snowflake or wherever your databases live, and then you've got the nice tools that you use to move data from one place to another, to make notifications, to make alerts. I tend to view my job as fairly tool agnostic because there are so many different options out there, and every corporation uses a slightly different one, that it's much more important to know the underlying ideas of, okay, how do I build a data warehouse, rather than what am I going to build a data warehouse with.
Mm-hmm.
Usually most enterprises have made some decision to be like, okay, we're going to be an AWS house, or we're going to be a Google Cloud house, or we're going to be a Snowflake house. And you got to be able to accommodate whatever job you're particularly in. If I was starting a startup, if I was building one from scratch, I'd probably start with Snowflake, but it depends on what exactly the use case is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's like once you get to a level of understanding how things should be, the specific tool that you use is really depending on the needs rather than, what have available. I assume you have some mentor along your growth.
Well, I mean, everyone who's made it anywhere has not just one but many mentors. I think that my ability to communicate. I'm the son of journalists, and they always told me growing up, "You can do anything you want, Paul, except journalism." And I give a lot of my interest in technology, and my interest in communication comes from my parents. My interest in technology in specific comes from my father. He was a tech journalist back in the 80s and 90s, and he was actually a pretty valuable commodity to startups who wanted to get their name out there. Because if you get a tech guy that about you, you get legitimacy, you get people noticing you. So he actually ended up having a lot of conversations with like Jeff Bezos, with like Mark Zuckerberg. He back when they were nobody, right?
Yeah.
And he had conversations with them. That sort of association of, oh wow, hey, those are real people. It made entering the tech world less daunting, because it's like, oh well, I'm with my dad on it. As if my dad thought that who's the Texas Mark Cuban's a jerk for standing him up at lunch. then they're just people, and I can go in. They're not doing anything particularly special that I can't do, right? Um, I also have a big mentor in one of my high school teachers, Dr. Brett Stewart. Very intelligent man, worked at Texas Instruments for like 30, 40 years, and basically spent his retirement teaching. There was one semester where I spent 4 periods out of an 8-period day in his classroom. So I would joke that I saw him more than he saw his wife. But like he really had a way of communicating numbers and very abstract concepts in a way that wasn't dry. It's so easy when you're reading a textbook, a physics textbook, or a computer science textbook to just glaze over. It's like, oh yeah, that means that means that, and not actually engage with what's being said, right? And one thing that I really learned from him is, okay, how do I tease out that level of engagement, both in myself and my education, and how do I tease that level of engagement out when I'm talking to someone else and trying to communicate with them?
I see. That's awesome. I mean, I guess that's probably why you're interested in data analytics in the first place, because you see the power of hidden, like the power of data hidden behind all that, technical speech. There's so much potential behind that.
And like there isn't a person in the world who couldn't learn SQL, or at least the basics of what you need to do most data analytics jobs. And it should not be a barrier for. Like, I'd love to teach everyone in the world SQL, so it wasn't a barrier for anyone. So that you could just demystify it and just really get them engaged in, okay, what do these numbers actually mean? What do they do?
Let's say if you didn't need to work for money, didn't have to pay the bill, what would you be doing?
Well, it depends on how much money I had. So if I could live a comfortable life without working, I probably would. I have aspirations. I think that being a part of the decision makers, like in Washington or in Austin or any capital or even a city council, has so many fascinating. It's a fascinating problem, right? Because you're trying to juggle the interests of hundreds, thousands, 100 millions of people, right? And not only being able to, even just hearing them is an immense challenge.
Yes.
And I think that I'm the sort of guy that wants to tackle the most interesting, biggest challenges I can find. And I think that the political sphere is an immensely interesting challenge.
I see.
But there's a lot of good that can be done there too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So, do you see yourself, like doing data engineering for political campaign or even like the government, really?
Less so the government in particular. There are already. I have enough friends in the public sector who tell me don't work in the public sector. I actually am currently talking to a few people who are, there are a couple of people who are running for Austin City Council, Texas State Senator. There are a couple of people that I am in conversation with. I'm also talking to people who are looking to connect me with like organizations that help candidates. And one thing I'm doing right now is I'm trying to build a fundraising automation system that basically can send out automated emails. Like basically, so candidates have to make calls, right? They have to make calls to raise money. So this idea started as, okay, we have get a transcript from the call, feed that through generative AI, have it spit out a summary with like key values like how much money, if any, was promised, key issues, tone of the call, like all this sorts of stuff, right? And what I think is that if you can put that into a generative AI, you can then spit that out into a spreadsheet, which once you have it in that spreadsheet, you can start doing things like sending out automatic like notifications, like, "Hey, you promised $200 in that call. Here's a link. Oh, hey, we see that you didn't donate us $200. Here's an email a week and a half later, being like, hey, just want to see where you're at with that, haha." Just give them a reminder. And there's so much work that is being done, and that sort of work is an immense amount of what small campaigns require, right? There are a lot of 2-3 person campaigns out there that that is 80% of the work. And what I'm hoping is that if I can liberate people from that work, then they can go out and they can do a much better job like having real discourse, really engaging their citizenry, really being out there in the community, as opposed to doing bureaucracy.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I think it's a trend. I mean, it's not really a trend, but I think the need for like smaller, more independent candidates to join the political field, and then this kind of tool will be tremendous for them to get started.
There are already, yeah, and I'm not talking like national, like I'm talking like your city councilman probably had a 3-person campaign, right?
Yep.
Your state senator might have had 5 people on the staff.
Mhm.
It's easy to think of political campaigns as 10,000 people, Joe Biden, Donald Trump things, but 95% of politics is probably less than 10 people campaigns. So if we can make those people twice as effective, that means that not only can more people enter the political sphere, that means that the people that do enter it are going to be able to talk to and listen to their constituents. They're going to have more energy to do what they're doing.
Mhm. I'm actually also being I would manage like campaign finance system for a few states for quite a long time, and uh, I personally have seen so many teams that just husband and wife just like
Yeah.
running their own campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you got if you've got someone working 10 hours a week on this, and you can liberate them from that, that means that can mean that people who don't have that 10 hours can now train. That means that people who do have that 10 hours can now do a better job.
Mhm.
That means that, like, if you can lower the barrier to entry for women, that makes democracy better.
Yep.
And you can tell I'm very passionate about it.
That's great. I mean, like, I think now more than ever, we really need those people to be able to stand up and, make a better future for everybody.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, do you have ever doubt yourself when you go on this path, career path?
Uh, Look, I thought for a very long time that I wanted to be a PhD. Dr. Vonder Haar is way too cool of a name to give up easily. And I said it was I mentioned it earlier, like it was something that was easy to decide, but deciding to leave grad school was not easy. There was a lot of soul searching and a lot of you know uh, you can't help but have a feeling of failure when you decide to give up on something that you really thought you wanted, even if you don't really want it anymore. And but ultimately, it's about just pointing a path, and trying to take the next step to it. And if you can take the next step to it, you're moving, right? And in physics, you learn an object in motion tends to stay in motion. So the most important thing is I think the most important thing isn't the destination; it's the motion.
Mm. Awesome. Yeah, completely agree. I mean, like a lot of time in life, we can, hit a road bump at any time, and it's important to kind of keep going because that's the only way we can grow.
Yeah, and it's very easy to stop. It's very easy to but well, it's very hard to take that first step. But where I'm at now, it would be much harder to stop.
Mm. What do you, let's say, uh, if any junior data engineer want to break into, data engineering, do you have any advice for them?
Absolutely. So I actually have a friend of mine who is looking to become like a data analyst. Um, really smart guy. Like you can tell that he was totally on the ball on the technology, knew how to build all this cool backend stuff. Really smart, going out of his way, like not only applying for jobs, but being like, "Hey, I'm going to go find out who the hiring manager is for this job, and then try to call them." Right?
Mm.
And he couldn't find a job. And as Tom talking to him, I'm like, "Hey, well, what's the problem? Like, are you talking to any recruiters?" And he said no.
Mm.
He just wasn't talking to any recruiters because he didn't think that anyone was out there looking to help him out find a job. He thought they were all scams or useless, which no one had ever told him the other way. So it's not that he never tried it himself. So I can see why he would fall for that trap.
Mhm.
But most jobs you're going to be finding in any tech world is going to be through a recruiter or through a personal, connection. So when you're starting out, you don't have those personal connections, get noticed by a recruiter, they'll take you to that next level.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of technologies, it's good to know Python, good to know CSS, it's good to know C++, it's good to know some sort of object-oriented technology. Learn SQL inside. SQL is the easiest skill to learn for the most return. Like it is the benefit to it is immense. Like it is crazy how much, like if you're a data analyst and you like know Tableau and like you're making nice visualizations, you will get 10 to 20 grand a year more if you know how to do SQL. That's just what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So really get to know SQL. Build a couple of simple Python projects. Just keep building stuff. And that's really key. Even if it's not directly related to data engineering, build stuff. Because when you're building stuff, you're learning way more than you are solving weak code challenges or watching videos or whatever. And that's what's going to get you noticed, and that's what's going to really get you to that next level.
Mm-hmm. I completely agree with that. I mean, I guess, personally, I also started with Excel, and then shortly after that, SQL. And when you are able to like play around with SQL databases, it's like expand the whole new like world for you to understand so much more than just SQL. But it can become a foundation for you to like go to coding even, because like everything else is based on databases.
Yeah, it's amazing how valuable the skill is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing those tips. Let's say if you have a magic wand, what would you change immediately with the data engineer field?
So there's two answers for this. One, I would make every data engineer a perfect communicator and a perfect advocate for data. So I'd either do that, or I'd change it such that everyone really could buy into and understand and engage with on a real level what the real value of data engineering and data broadly is. I wouldn't like the technologies are there. People are building incredible things off of it. The whole AI, the whole generative AI modeling thing is built on the backbone of solid data engineering. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are booms upon booms upon booms in data. We have whole massive industries like social media that are just built on data, but a lot of industries haven't quite caught on to what that boom can do for their industry. There are 1,000 revolutions. There are 1,000 industrial revolutions that are waiting, and it just needs more data. It just needs more advocates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think recently I learned that like ChatGPT, I think it was built on over 18 years of data
Yeah.
from Reddit.
Yeah.
Like,
That and you can't get that sort of data. You can't get ChatGPT without a good, solid infrastructure supporting and building it.
yeah, and it totally come back to like data engineering because you are the one that building the foundation for everything else to exist and then thrive on it.
Yep. And what you tend to find is that on the higher levels, like the line between data engineer, data scientist, and data analyst are all very fuzzy, and people just kind of pick whichever title they prefer. Uh, there's no clear line between the three.
Hmm.
If you're in data, you are like if you are in data, you are touching parts of all three of them all the time.
So, Paul, actually, that's all the questions that I have for you. Do you have any, let's say, if somebody would like to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
If they want to, literally any way they want to, hit me up on LinkedIn. My name is Paul Vonder Haar. I believe you can see it on the screen right now.
Hmm.
You can reach out to me at pvonhar@gmail, or you can give me a call at 817-797-1786. I'm at the point in my life where new connections are always valuable. So if you have something you want to say, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me a message. However you want to reach me, I'd be happy to work with you.
Sounds great. And actually, I will also put all of that information in the description of this video so that anybody want to get in touch with Paul can easily access those info. Yeah. So, oh, Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
it's great, and I would love to have you back sometime later.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, if you have something you want to talk about, or hey, you wanna dig a little, like you said you would manage the candidate finances for that. I wouldn't mind digging into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like, I agree with you, and it's like there's so much potential in campaign finance right now. I guess even like Congress just passed a lot of law that affect that area.
Well, the thing is that most people who interact with campaign finance are like lawyers and not engineers. And so they built all these rules, which are perfectly designed to be modeled in an engineering sense, to be automated, to be whatever. But no one there knows how to write a line of code, so it never even occurs to them.
Hmm. Yep, totally. I mean, like, if there's a way, like you mentioned before, if there's a way for other people to understand how significant data can do for their business, especially in campaign finance, we in so much better spot right now.
There are 10 million ways that we could improve, like in terms of efficiency, in terms of knowing where to allocate our money, in terms of just about everything. Like everything can be improved.
Hmm. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today, and everybody, thank you for watching the show.
Thank you very much.